The sky above Varan 7 turned red as the ships descended. Not the gentle red of their twin suns at sunset, but the angry crimson of burning atmosphere and dying cities. Chancellor Primshaw watched from the Planetary Defense Center as another district fell silent on the communication grid. The Krell were efficient, he would give them that. They didn't destroy for sport or conquest. They simply consumed. Buildings, crops, people. It made no difference to the swarm. "Send the signal again," Primshaw said, his voice barely steady. His aide, a younger Velthir named Kesh, looked up from the console with fear in his large eyes. "Chancellor, we've sent it to every coalition world. They say their peacekeeping fleets are already deployed in other sectors. The earliest response is 3 cycles away." 3 cycles. Primshaw looked at the tactical display. At the current rate, the Krell would consume the capital in 6 hours. The planet would be stripped bare in 2 days. "What about the restricted zones?" Kesh asked quietly. "The quarantine sectors?" Every coalition member knew about the quarantine sectors. Dangerous worlds, hostile species, places where the peaceful races of the galaxy dared not venture. Zone 2847 was the most infamous, home to the species called humans. The coalition had made first contact with them 40 years ago and immediately sealed their system. The reports had been classified, but rumors spread. A death world, they said. Gravity that would crush most species. An atmosphere that was literally poison to breathers like the Velthir. And creatures so violent that they had been at war with themselves for their entire recorded history. "No," Primshaw said. "We don't know what they would do." "We know what the Krell will do," Kesh replied. Primshaw's hand hovered over the console. Every instinct told him this was wrong. But what choice did he have? He pressed the button. The distress signal burst across all frequencies, including the quarantine band. The response came faster than possible. 37 minutes later, sensors detected quantum signatures. Ships were jumping into the system, dozens of them. "Coalition fleet?" Primshaw asked hopefully. Kesh checked the readings and went very still. "No, sir. The signatures are from Quarantine Zone 2847. The human fleet emerged from quantum space like predators entering a hunting ground. 47 warships, each one angular and brutal in design. They didn't have the smooth curves of coalition vessels. These ships looked like they were built to break things. The lead vessel was enormous, twice the size of the largest coalition cruiser. Its hull was dark gray, covered in what looked like scars from previous battles. Weapons bristled from every surface. The name was printed in bold characters, Incheon's Fury. "They're hailing us," Kesh said. "Audio only." "Put them through." The voice that came through the speakers was calm and deep. It spoke in perfectly translated Velthir, but there was something in the tone that made Primshaw's skin crawl. A coldness, a certainty. "This is Commander Day of the Earth Defense Fleet. We received your distress signal. Transmit tactical data on the Krell positions." "Commander Day," Primshaw began. "We are grateful for your response, but we must coordinate with coalition protocols." "There are no protocols for this," Day interrupted. "The Krell are a hive species. They don't negotiate. They don't retreat. They consume or they die. Which would you prefer for your world?" Primshaw felt Kesh staring at him. "We want them gone, of course, but—" "Then send the data. We'll handle the rest." Something in that voice made Primshaw's hands move before his mind could object. He transmitted everything: Krell positions, civilian locations, defense grids. "Received," Day said. "All civilians should seek underground shelter immediately. Do not surface until we give clearance." "Why? What are you going to—" The communication cut off. On the tactical display, the human fleet was moving, but not in any formation Primshaw recognized. They weren't surrounding the planet defensively. They weren't setting up a blockade. They were diving straight toward Varan 7, toward the capital city where millions of Veltir were trapped with the Krell. "Get me Coalition Command," Primshaw ordered. "Tell them the humans are here. Tell them—" The first human ship hit atmosphere. Primshaw watched in horror as 3 massive vessels, each bigger than his entire defense force, screamed through the clouds at speeds that should have torn them apart. They didn't slow down. They didn't ask permission. They simply came. "Sir, they're deploying drop pods," Kesh said, his voice shaking. "Hundreds of them. They're heading straight into the Krell-controlled zones." "That's suicide. The Krell have overrun those areas. Nothing survives on the ground." A new voice came through the speakers. Female, younger than Days, but with the same unsettling confidence. "Chancellor Primshaw, this is Ambassador Hana. I apologize for Commander Day's brevity. We understand this is your first time dealing with Earth forces. I want to assure you that we are here to help." "Your ships are entering atmosphere without coordination," Primshaw said. "Your soldiers are dropping into suicide zones. This isn't help. This is chaos." There was a pause. When Hana spoke again, her voice was careful. "Chancellor, I need you to understand something about my people. We come from what the Coalition classifies as a Class 12 death world. That scale only goes to 10. Earth has gravity that would crush most species. Our atmosphere would poison you. Our weather would kill you. Our predators would hunt you. We evolved in hell, Chancellor. And we learned to thrive there." "What does that have to do with—" "It means your suicide zones are our natural habitat. The Krell think they're apex predators. They're about to learn they're not." On the screens, the drop pods were landing. Primshaw watched as human soldiers emerged into streets swarming with Krell warriors. He expected to see them overwhelmed immediately. Instead, he saw something that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. The humans didn't run. They didn't even hesitate. They formed into small groups and started advancing into the swarm with weapons that made sounds Primshaw had never heard before. Loud, explosive cracks that echoed across the communication feeds. The Krell, who had swept through every defense Varan 7 had, suddenly started dying. "Chancellor," Kesh whispered, pointing at another screen. "Look at this one." A human soldier, the armor markings identified her as Captain Wu, had been knocked down by 3 Krell warriors. Primshaw was certain she was dead, but she stood up. With what looked like a broken arm, she raised her weapon with her other hand and killed all 3 Krell at point-blank range. Then she kept fighting. "That should have killed her," Kesh said. "Multiple fractures, possible internal injuries. Why isn't she down?" Ambassador Hana's voice came through again, gentle but firm. "Chancellor, I suggest you move your people to shelter. The Krell are about to learn why the galaxy quarantined Earth, and it's not going to be pretty." Primshaw looked at the spreading chaos on his screens. Human soldiers were pushing into the Krell like fire through dry grass. The swarm was adapting, sending more warriors, but the humans just kept coming. They didn't fear death. They welcomed it. He had sent the SOS hoping for rescue. What he got was something else entirely. Something ancient and terrible that his peaceful species had forgotten could exist. He got war. And the humans, he realized with growing horror, were very good at it. The screaming started 3 hours into the battle. Not from the Velthir civilians who were huddled in underground shelters as instructed. Not from the Krell, who made no sound even as they died. The screaming came from human soldiers, broadcast across open channels. At first, Primshaw thought they were dying. Then he realized the truth was worse. They were calling to each other. Battle cries, war songs, challenges shouted in their harsh language as they pushed deeper into Krell territory. "Sir? Coalition Command is demanding we explain the situation," Kesh said. "They want to know why we authorized human intervention." "We didn't authorize anything, they just came." On the main screen, a human squad was advancing through the ruins of the Grand Market. Their leader, A soldier identified as Sergeant Tae Yang moved with a confidence that seemed insane. The Krell outnumbered his squad 20-1. He didn't care. "Target-rich environment," Tae Yang said over the comm, and his squad laughed. They laughed while surrounded by monsters. Primsha watched as Tae Yang's squad entered a building that sensors showed was completely infested with Krell. They emerged 6 minutes later. The building was on fire. Every Krell inside was dead. "How?" Kesh whispered. "Our best soldiers couldn't clear a single room." "They cleared an entire structure." Ambassador Hana materialized on the video screen. She looked tired, Primsha thought. Sad, even. "Chancellor, I know what you're seeing is difficult to understand. Would you like me to explain human military doctrine?" "Yes," Primsha said immediately. "Please." Hana nodded. "Humans are persistence hunters. On Earth, we didn't win fights by being stronger or faster than our prey. We won by never stopping. We would chase animals for days until they collapsed from exhaustion. We learned to ignore pain, to push our bodies past their limits, to keep moving when every instinct said to stop. But the Krell are warriors, not prey. To us, everything that threatens us is prey," Hana said quietly. "We've been apex predators for 200,000 years. The Krell are just another hunt." A new alarm sounded. Krell bioships were moving in orbit, trying to establish a landing zone for reinforcements. Before Primsha could even process the threat, Captain Wu's voice came across the command channel. "Incheon's Fury to Fleet. Engaging enemy orbital elements. Authorization code Wu-77. "Wait," Primsha said. "Those ships are directly above populated areas. If the debris—" But the humans didn't wait. Incheon's Fury and 6 other human warships broke from their holding pattern and accelerated toward the Krell bioships. The engagement lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, all 12 Krell vessels were destroyed. The human ships had taken heavy damage but were still operational. "Debris trajectory calculated," a calm human voice reported. "All fragments will impact in ocean sectors. 0 civilian casualties projected." They had calculated the debris patterns in the middle of a space battle. They had planned for victory so completely that they already knew where every piece of wreckage would fall. "I'm beginning to understand," Primsha said slowly, "why the Coalition quarantined your world." "We're not monsters," Hana said. "We're just very, very good at killing things that threaten us. It's a survival trait. On Earth, it kept us alive. Out here," she gestured at the tactical displays, "it makes us necessary evils." On the ground, the battle was shifting. The Krell were adapting, forming tighter groups, using tactics designed to overwhelm individual soldiers. It should have worked. Against any other species, it would have. But the humans adapted faster. Lieutenant Yuna, operating from a command ship in orbit, was directing the battle with frightening precision. She identified Krell movement patterns within minutes and exploited them within seconds. When the Krell tried to flank a human position, they found themselves walking into ambushes. When they tried to retreat, they discovered humans had already cut off their escape routes. "She's reading their hive mind," Kesh said in amazement. "How is that possible?" "Yuna wrote her doctoral thesis on swarm intelligence," Hana explained. "She studied Earth insects, ants, bees, termites. The Krell operate on similar principles, just on a larger scale. To her, this isn't an alien invasion. It's a pattern recognition exercise." Primsha felt sick. These humans didn't see a desperate battle for survival. They saw problems to solve, puzzles to complete. They had turned war into a science. A medical transport landed near the defense center. Dr. Mira, the fleet medical officer, requested permission to enter. Primsha granted it immediately, hoping to find some humanity, some normal compassion among these terrifying warriors. Dr. Mira was small for a human, with kind eyes and gentle movements. She looked normal. Then she started setting up her equipment, and Primsha realized his mistake. "I'm establishing a trauma station here," Mira explained. "We'll be processing wounded as they come in. I wanted to coordinate with your medical staff in case we need additional supplies." "Of course," Primsha said. "How many wounded are you expecting?" "Current projections show approximately 400 combat injuries. About 30% will be Category 3 or higher, severe trauma, major organ damage, potential fatalities." She said it so calmly, like she was discussing the weather. "And you can treat all of them?" Mira smiled. It wasn't a comforting smile. "Chancellor, I've worked trauma stations on Mars during the colony rebellions. I've performed surgery in zero gravity while under fire. 400 wounded in a ground engagement with stable supply lines. This is a quiet day." The first wounded arrived 20 minutes later. A human private named Jin, barely old enough to be called an adult by Veltier standards. He had taken shrapnel from a Krell explosive. The injuries were severe: punctured lung, internal bleeding, multiple fractures. Jin was conscious and joking with the medics carrying him. "Doc, you should see the other guy," he said through blood-stained teeth. "The other guy is in pieces," one of the medics replied. "You put an entire magazine into him at 5 meters. "Had to be sure," Jin laughed, then coughed. Mira's instruments showed the lung was collapsing. "Hold still," Mira said, injecting something into Jin's neck. She opened his armor and started working with tools that made Primsha look away. The sounds were wrong. The smells were wrong. Everything was wrong. 10 minutes later, Jin was stable and complaining that he wanted to go back to his squad. "Negative," Mira said. "You're grounded for 6 hours minimum." 6 hours? "Doc, the fight's happening now, and you'll live to see tomorrow's fight. Be patient." Jin muttered something in Korean that made the other wounded soldiers laugh. Mira ignored him and moved to the next patient. "Your people heal fast," Primsha observed. "Fast enough," Mira said. "Human bodies are designed for damage. We have redundant systems, high pain tolerance, and aggressive healing factors. We're not the strongest species or the smartest, but we're very hard to kill." More wounded arrived. Some walked in on their own despite injuries that should have been incapacitating. Others were carried but still conscious, still alert. None of them seemed afraid. None of them questioned whether they would survive. They expected to survive, expected to heal, expected to fight again. "How many battles has your species fought?" Primsha asked Hana quietly. "All of them," she replied. "Every single day for our entire existence. We fought the planet. We fought the weather. We fought the animals. We fought disease. We fought each other. And we're still here. That's what makes us dangerous, Chancellor. We never learned how to stop fighting." On the screens, the Krell were beginning to retreat. Not in panic. They didn't feel fear, but in calculation. They were recognizing that this prey was too costly to consume. They started pulling back to their landing zones, preparing to leave. Commander Day's voice cut across all channels. "Negative on Krell withdrawal. All units pursue and eliminate. We do not leave threats alive to return another day." "They're retreating," Primsha shouted. "Let them go." Hana looked at him with those sad, tired eyes. "Chancellor, the Krell don't retreat. They reposition. If we let them leave, they'll attack another world next week. Another species will send another distress signal. More billions will die. Is that what you want? I want the killing to stop. Then let us finish it." The human forces pursued the Krell to their landing sites and destroyed them there. Every single one. When the battle ended 6 hours later, there were no Krell survivors, no prisoners, no witnesses, just humans standing in the ruins of Varan 7's capital, victorious and terrifying. The silence after the battle was worse than the fighting. Primsha walked through his capital city with a Velthir recovery team, surveying the damage. Human soldiers moved through the rubble with disturbing efficiency, clearing structures and marking safe zones. They didn't look tired. They looked ready to do it all over again. 23% of the capital district is destroyed, Kesh reported, reading from his data pad. Estimated reconstruction time is 4 years. Casualty count among our people is actually lower than projected. The humans kept their fire disciplined. Primsha stared at a crater where the central archive had stood for 6 centuries. Disciplined. They burned half the city and you call it disciplined. They could have burned all of it, a voice said behind them. Primsha turned to see Commander Day standing there in his combat armor. Up close, the human was shorter than Primsha expected, but there was something about his presence that made the Velthir want to back away. Predator eyes. That's what they were. Eyes that measured everything as either threat or prey. "Commander," Primsha said carefully, "we are grateful for your intervention." "But?" Day prompted. "But your methods were extreme. The Coalition has protocols for engagement, rules of warfare. You violated most of them." Day nodded slowly. "Your protocols assume that both sides want to minimize casualties, that both sides value life. The Krell don't. They're a hive mind designed for one purpose, consumption. You can't negotiate with them. You can't frighten them. You can only kill them." He paused. "All of them. You committed genocide." "Yes," Day said simply. "We did, because if we left even one Krell ship, one queen, one egg cluster, they would return. And next time, you might not be lucky enough to have humans nearby." Lucky. The word felt obscene. A Coalition transport ship entered orbit 3 hours later. Admiral Sung arrived with a full diplomatic team and what looked like an entire legal department. They set up in the defense center and immediately began reviewing combat footage. Primsha watched as the Coalition representatives grew paler with each video. Sung, a stern woman from a heavy-gravity world called Titan's Hope, looked particularly disturbed. She had served in Coalition peacekeeping forces for 30 years. She had seen conflict, but nothing like this. "This footage shows human soldiers using incendiary weapons in populated areas," Sung said, pointing at a screen. "This is a banned weapon under Coalition law." "The areas were already evacuated," Day replied calmly. "And incendiary weapons are the most effective way to clear Krell nests. They reproduce quickly. Fire stops that. This footage shows orbital strikes dangerously close to civilian shelters. All strikes were calculated to within 0.5 meters of accuracy. No civilian shelters were damaged. This footage shows—" Sung stopped, her hand hovering over the controls. "Commander Day, is that a nuclear weapon?" Every head in the room turned. On the screen, a human missile was being loaded onto a bomber. The radiation signature was unmistakable. "A tactical nuclear device, yes," Day confirmed. "We didn't use it. The conventional assault succeeded. But we don't go into battle without all options available." "You brought nuclear weapons into a populated system." Sung was standing now, her voice rising. "Do you understand what would have happened if that had detonated near the capital? Approximately 200,000 immediate casualties, followed by radiation exposure affecting another million Velthir over the next 6 months," Day said. "Lieutenant Yuna ran the calculations before we jumped into the system." The room went silent. Even Sung seemed at a loss for words. "You calculated acceptable losses before you even arrived," Primsha said slowly. "You were prepared to kill millions of my people to stop the Krell." "Yes," Day said, "because the alternative was the Krell killing all of your people. We chose the option with the most survivors." Ambassador Hana stepped forward. She had been quiet until now, but Primsha could see the strain in her face. "Admiral Sung, I understand how this looks. But humans think differently about warfare. We don't fight to achieve political objectives or establish dominance. We fight to eliminate threats, completely, Permanently. It's a survival strategy that kept us alive on Earth. Well, you're not on Earth anymore, Sung said coldly. You're in coalition space, and there are rules. Rules that let the Krell consume 4 worlds before anyone responded, Day countered. Rules that would have let them finish eating Varan 7 while your peacekeeping fleet was still 3 cycles away. Your rules are designed for civilized species who understand restraint. The Krell aren't civilized. A young coalition scientist named Eun spoke up. She had been studying human physiology and psychology for the past week, trying to understand these terrifying creatures. Commander, I've reviewed your species' history. You've been fighting continuously for at least 60,000 years. War is encoded in your culture, your language, your very genetic memory. Don't you ever want peace? Day was quiet for a long moment. Do you know what the longest period of global peace was on Earth? 43 years. And we only achieved that by developing weapons so terrible that using them would destroy our entire world. We created peace through the threat of mutual annihilation. That's the only peace we've ever known. That's horrifying, Yoon whispered. That's honest, Day replied. Every other species in the galaxy evolved on worlds that let them dream of peace. Earth didn't give us that luxury. We learned to fight, or we learned to die, so we became very good at fighting. The medical reports came in later that day. Human casualties, 143 dead, 402 wounded. By human standards, Commander Day explained, this was considered light losses. By coalition standards, it was catastrophic. How do you live with this? Primshaw asked Dr. Mira. The human doctor was treating wounded soldiers, most of whom would be back in combat status within days. We remember the alternative, Mira said. Every human soldier knows someone who died in war. We all carry that weight. But we also know that if we don't fight, more people die. Not just us, everyone. She gestured at the soldiers around her. These men and women volunteered to be here. They chose to face death so others wouldn't have to. Private Jin, the young soldier who had been critically wounded, was already walking around. His lung had been repaired. His fractures were healing. He was arguing with Mira about returning to duty. I'm fine, Doc, see? Walking, talking, breathing. You were dying 6 hours ago. Yeah, but I'm not dying now. That's what matters, right? Mira shook her head but couldn't quite hide a smile. Humans, she muttered. No sense of proper recovery time. That evening, the humans held a memorial service for their dead. Primsha attended, thinking he might finally see these warriors show normal emotion. He was wrong. The service was held on the landing field, with the human fleet visible in orbit above. The dead were laid out in simple shrouds, 143 bodies in neat rows. Commander Day stood before them and spoke. We came here to answer a distress signal. We did our duty. These soldiers died doing theirs. They died so that billions of Veltir could live. That is a trade we accept. That is a trade we will always accept. Then the humans sang. It wasn't a sad song. It wasn't even peaceful. It was a war song, loud and fierce and defiant. They sang about glory and victory and fighting until the end. They sang while standing over their dead friends and comrades. Primshaw realized he was crying, not for the human dead, though they deserved tears. He was crying because he finally understood. These humans didn't mourn death. They celebrated it, because death in battle meant something to them. It meant purpose. It meant sacrifice. It meant that someone else got to live. The Veltir didn't think like that. No one in the coalition did. Death was failure. Death was tragedy. Death was to be avoided at all costs. But to humans, death was just another part of the fight. And they never stopped fighting. Admiral Sung approached Primshaw after the service. Chancellor, I need you to testify before the Coalition Council. They need to understand what happened here. What will you tell them? Primshaw asked. The truth, that humans saved your world, and that they terrified me more than the Krell ever did. A new alert sounded. Another distress signal from a mining colony 12 systems away. Another species under attack. Coalition peacekeeping forces were estimating a 2-cycle response time. Commander Day was already moving toward his ship. With your permission, Admiral, we'll respond to that signal. You don't have authorization, Sung said. Then we'll go without it. Someone sent a distress call. We answer distress calls. That's what we do. The human fleet launched before Sung could order them to stand down. 47 warships burning hard toward another battle, another world, another desperate fight. Primsha watched them go and felt something he never expected to feel. Relief. Because whatever was attacking that colony had no idea what was coming for them, and Primsha almost felt sorry for them. Almost. 6 months after the Battle of Varan 7, the galaxy had changed. 4 more species had sent distress signals into the quarantine zone. 4 more times the human fleet had responded. 4 more worlds had been saved by creatures that terrified them more than their attackers had. The pattern was always the same. Overwhelming violence, complete victory, and a galaxy-wide debate about whether humans were saviors or monsters. Primsha stood before the Coalition Council on Sanctus Prime, the neutral world where representatives from 200 species gathered to debate the future. Today's debate had a simple question. Should humanity be allowed into Coalition space, or should Earth be sealed off forever? The council chamber was massive, with seating arranged in concentric circles around a central platform. Primsha stood on that platform, aware that 200 pairs of alien eyes were watching him. Some friendly, most suspicious, all afraid. Chancellor Primsha, Council Speaker Vorn began, you were the first to activate Earth's quarantine beacon. You witnessed human warfare firsthand. In your professional opinion, are humans a threat to coalition peace? Primsha thought about that question carefully. He had been preparing for this moment for months. But now that it was here, the words felt heavy on his tongue. Yes, he said finally. Humans are a threat. They are the most dangerous species I have ever encountered. They fight without fear. They kill without hesitation. They have weapons that violate every law of civilized warfare. They are brutal, efficient, and absolutely terrifying. The chamber erupted in agreement. Representatives nodded and made sounds of approval in their various languages. This was what they wanted to hear. Confirmation that humans should remain locked away. However, Primsha continued, and the chamber fell silent. They are also the reason my species still exists. He activated the holographic display, showing footage from the Krell attack. This is what our capital looked like before the humans arrived. The Krell had overwhelmed every defense we had. Coalition peacekeepers were 2 cycles away. In 2 more days, every Velt here on my world would have been consumed. The footage shifted. This is what happened when Commander Day's fleet arrived. Yes, they were violent. Yes, they destroyed large parts of our city. But look at this. He highlighted a section of the battle. See how they positioned themselves between the Krell and civilian shelters? How they took fire to protect evacuation routes? How they calculated every strike to minimize collateral damage? They still used nuclear weapons, someone shouted from the gallery. A representative from the Peaceful Accord, a pacifist alliance of 6 species. They brought nuclear weapons, Primsha corrected. They didn't use them, because despite their violent nature, humans understand restraint. They don't kill because they enjoy it. They kill because it's the only language some threats understand. Admiral Sung spoke next. She had spent the last 6 months investigating human military operations, and her findings were grim. The Council needs to understand what humans represent. In the past 6 months, they have responded to 7 distress signals, 7 battles. They have killed an estimated 4 billion hostile combatants. 0 coalition civilians have died from human action. 0. They also refused to take prisoners, another representative argued. They committed genocide against the Krell, against the Ravagers, against the Void Swarms. They don't leave survivors. Because survivors come back, Commander Day's voice cut through the chamber. He had appeared on the platform, uninvited and unauthorized. Security moved to remove him, but Council Speaker Vorn held up a hand. You were not called to speak, Commander. I don't care, Day said flatly. You're debating whether my species should be allowed to exist in your space. I have a right to defend my people. The chamber went quiet. Primshaw saw fear on faces all around him. Day was unarmed, alone, surrounded by 200 hostile species, and he looked completely calm. Say what you came to say, Vorn said finally. Day walked to the center of the platform. You call us monsters. You're right, we are. Earth made us that way. But here's what you need to understand. We're monsters who fight other monsters. The Krell don't negotiate. The Ravagers don't show mercy. The Void Swarms don't take prisoners. Your peaceful philosophies mean nothing to them. So you needed monsters who speak their language. You needed us. We didn't ask for you, someone shouted. Yes, you did. Varan 7 did. The mining colony at Kepler 442 did. The agricultural world of Haven's Rest did. 7 times in 6 months, someone in this galaxy sent out a distress signal begging for help, and 7 times we answered, not because we enjoy killing, but because no one else would. Ambassador Hana stepped onto the platform beside Day. She looked exhausted, Primshaw noticed. 6 months of trying to make the galaxy understand humanity had worn her down. The Council needs to make a decision, Hana said. Either accept us as members with special military exemptions or close the quarantine zone permanently. We won't force our way in. But you need to understand, if you close that zone, the next time someone sends a distress signal, we won't be able to answer. Good, a representative from the Peaceful Accord said. Let your violence stay contained in your own system. Then you accept that species will die, Day said. Because your peacekeeping fleets can't respond fast enough. Your ships aren't designed for combat. Your soldiers aren't trained for war. When real threats emerge, and they will, you'll be helpless. Scientist Yoon stood to speak. She had been studying humans for months, and her report had been widely circulated. I've analyzed human psychology and history. What Commander Day says is accurate. Humans are persistence predators with extraordinary resilience and pain tolerance. They have redundant biological systems that let them survive injuries that would kill most species. Their brains are wired for pattern recognition in combat scenarios. They're literally evolved for warfare. That's exactly why they should be quarantined, someone argued. I'm not finished, Yoon said sharply. I also found that humans have extraordinary capacity for compassion, self-sacrifice, and loyalty. Every soldier I interviewed expressed the same sentiment. They fight, so others don't have to. They take on the burden of violence so peaceful species can remain peaceful. They hate what they are, but they've accepted it because someone has to do it. The debate continued for hours. Representatives argued about ethics, about military doctrine, about the nature of civilization itself. But Primshaw noticed something interesting. The species who argued most passionately for human containment were the ones who had never faced existential threats. The ones who had sent distress signals, who had seen their worlds under attack, who had watched humans save them. They were quiet. Finally, Council Speaker Vorn called for a vote. The measure before us: grant humanity provisional membership in the coalition with special military exemptions. They will be permitted to respond to distress signals and engage in defensive operations. They will be subject to oversight and review. All in favor? The vote was close. Closer than it should have been, Primshaw thought. But it passed. Humanity was officially part of the coalition. Day's expression didn't change. We accept the Council's decision. Earth will honor its obligations. And if we ask you to stop fighting? Vorn asked. If we order you to stand down? Then species will die, Day said simply, and you'll have to live with that choice. We already live with ours. After the session ended, Primshaw found Hana on an observation deck staring at the stars. She looked older than she had 6 months ago. "Do you regret it?" Primshaw asked. "Coming out here, showing the galaxy what humanity is?" Hana was quiet for a long time. "Every day. These people look at us like we're demons. They flinch when we enter rooms. They fear us more than they respect us." "But they accept you. Do they? Or did they just realize they need us?" She turned to face him. "Chancellor, humans have been trying to rise above our violent nature for centuries. We created art, philosophy, science. We dreamed of peace. And then you sent that distress signal, and we remembered what we really are. Killers. The galaxy's attack dogs." "You're more than that," Primshaw said. "You're the reason my children are alive, the reason billions across 7 worlds can sleep without fear. That has to count for something. Does it? Or did we just trade one kind of monster for another? The Krell consumed worlds. We destroy them. What's the difference?" "The difference," Primshaw said carefully, "is that you stop. The Krell would have kept consuming forever. But you fight, you win, and you go home. You don't conquer, you don't enslave, you don't terrorize, you're not monsters, you're just very good at fighting them." Hana smiled sadly. "You're kinder than we deserve, Chancellor." "Perhaps. Or perhaps I understand something the rest of the Council doesn't. The galaxy needed to be reminded that evil exists, that threats don't care about peace treaties and diplomatic solutions. You didn't create that reality. You just forced us to acknowledge it." A new distress signal came through that night. Another world under attack. Another species begging for help. Commander Day's fleet launched within the hour. And the galaxy, for better or worse, learned to live with its new protectors. 1 year after Varan 7, the galaxy had learned to live with fear. Not the fear of invasion or consumption, though those threats still existed. This was a different kind of fear, the kind that came from knowing that somewhere in the darkness, predators were watching, waiting, ready to kill anything that threatened the fragile peace. Those predators were human. Commander Day stood on the bridge of his new flagship, watching Earth rotate below. He had been promoted to Fleet Admiral after the Coalition vote, given command of humanity's first deep space battle group. 50 warships, 20,000 soldiers, all dedicated to answering distress signals across Coalition space. "Admiral," Captain Wu said from the tactical station, "we have a situation developing in Sector 7. Pirates are raiding shipping lanes near the Velthier trade routes." Day studied the report. Low-level criminals, probably scavengers looking for easy targets. Before humanity joined the Coalition, these raids had been common. Peacekeeping forces took weeks to respond. Pirates operated freely. Not anymore. "Send the message," Day ordered. Within minutes, every pirate ship in Sector 7 received the same transmission. It was simple. Just 3 words in every known language. "Humans are watching." The pirate raids stopped immediately. "Did we even need to say anything?" Wu asked. "Our reputation does the work now." "That's the point," Day replied. "The best battle is the one you don't have to fight. If our presence alone prevents violence, that's a victory." Lieutenant Yuna, now Commander Yuna, entered the bridge with a data pad. She had become the fleet's chief strategist, developing new tactics that balanced human effectiveness with coalition oversight. "Admiral, I've completed the analysis you requested. Human military actions over the past year, 18 engagements, estimated 47 billion hostile combatants eliminated, 0 coalition civilian casualties." "And our casualties?" 832 dead, 2,300 wounded. All recovered and returned to duty except for 73 who took medical retirement. Day nodded. By human standards, these were acceptable losses. By coalition standards, they were catastrophic. That gap in perspective had defined the entire year. Ambassador Hana arrived at Earth Command 3 hours later. She looked better than she had at the coalition vote, Primsha noticed. She had found peace with what humanity had become to the galaxy, necessary, feared, but accepted. The Coalition Council wants to discuss expanding human patrol zones, Hana said, settling into Day's office. 6 more species have requested human fleet presence in their territory. And the rest? The rest still think we're dangerous. They're not wrong. Hana pulled up a report. But even they admit that piracy is down 70%. Territorial disputes have dropped by half. Species think twice before starting conflicts because they know we might show up. We've become the galaxy's conscience, Day said. Or its nightmares, depends on who you ask. Dr. Mira joined them, fresh from a medical conference on Titan's Hope. She had spent the year teaching coalition medical staff how to treat combat injuries, though most species hoped they would never need that knowledge. The medical community is divided, she reported. Half think our trauma protocols are revolutionary. The other half think they're barbaric. Both can be true, Day said. The door chimed. Primsha entered, looking nervous. He had become an unofficial liaison between the Coalition and Earth, trying to bridge the gap between 2 very different philosophies. Admiral, we have a problem. Day gestured for him to continue. 3 coalition worlds have requested human military advisors. They want to train their own forces in human tactics. The peaceful accord is threatening to leave the coalition if we allow it. Let them leave, Day said coldly. They can explain to their citizens why they chose ideology over security. It's not that simple. If the accord leaves, 6 other species will follow. The coalition could fracture. Hana leaned forward. Chancellor, why do these worlds want human training? Because they're afraid, Primsha admitted. Not of current threats, of future ones. We've seen what happens when real danger emerges. Our peaceful philosophies mean nothing. These species want to be able to defend themselves without calling for humans every time. They want to become like us, Yuna said quietly. They want to learn how to be predators. Can we teach them? Primsha asked. The room fell silent. Finally, Day spoke. No. Human military effectiveness isn't just about tactics or weapons. It's about mindset. It's about being willing to die for strangers, about pushing through pain and fear and exhaustion, about making terrible choices and living with the consequences. You can't teach that. You have to be born into it. Then what do we do? Primsha asked. Because the galaxy is changing. Species are realizing that peace only exists because of threat of violence. They're losing their innocence. And it's our fault. It's not our fault, Hana said firmly. The Krell, the Ravagers, the Void Swarms, they were always there. We just made the galaxy acknowledge them. Better to face reality now than to be destroyed by it later. A priority alert interrupted them. Another distress signal, this time from a remote system on the edge of Coalition space. But this signal was different. The encryption was old, very old. And the message was fragmented, filled with words that didn't translate properly. What is it? Day asked. Yuna analyzed the data. It's not from any known Coalition species. The signal has been repeating for at least 300 years. Automated beacon, probably from a dead civilization. Then why is it relevant now? Because something just activated it. Something detected the beacon and responded to it. And whatever responded is now heading toward Coalition space. It's big, Admiral, bigger than anything in our database. Day felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. This was it. The real test. Not bandits or raiders or hive swarms. Something worse, something that had been sleeping in the dark, waiting for prey to make noise. How long until it reaches inhabited systems? 4 months. Maybe less if it can jump faster than we calculate. Can we stop it? Yuna hesitated. I don't know. I don't even know what it is. Day stood. Then we'll find out. Alert the fleet, deploy reconnaissance drones, and inform the Coalition Council. What do I tell them? Hana asked. Tell them that something old and hungry is coming. Tell them we'll do what we always do. We'll stand between it and them, and we'll kill it or die trying. The next 4 months were chaos. Coalition scientists analyzed the signal while human ships established a defensive perimeter. Civilians evacuated from border systems. Peacekeeping forces mobilized, though everyone knew they would be useless if this threat was as dangerous as the data suggested. The entity arrived exactly on schedule. It emerged from dark space as a massive biomechanical construct, larger than a moon, covered in what looked like scarred armor from countless ancient battles. Its communication attempts were hostile and incomprehensible. It wanted only one thing: to consume. The Battle of the Dark Divide, as historians would later call it, lasted 3 weeks. 50 human warships against something that had been killing civilizations for millennia. The fighting was brutal. The casualties were severe. Earth lost 12 ships and 4,000 soldiers. But humanity won, not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter. They won because they refused to quit. When the entity adapted to their weapons, they invented new ones. When it destroyed their formations, they reformed and attacked again. When it killed their friends, they fought harder. They won because that's what humans did. They survived. Afterward, Day stood in the wreckage of his bridge, bleeding from a dozen wounds but still conscious, still standing, still ready to fight if needed. Ambassador Hana contacted him from Earth Command. Admiral, the Coalition Council is calling this the greatest military victory in galactic history. They're offering you every honor they have. I don't want honors, Day said. I want those 4,000 soldiers back. I know. But you saved the galaxy, Admiral. Again. Doesn't that mean something? Day looked at the stars through the shattered viewport. It means we bought them more time. But something else will come eventually. Something worse. And we'll fight that too. Because that's what we are. The galaxy's shield. Its sword. Its nightmare. Is that enough? It has to be. On Veron 7, Primsha watched the celebration broadcasts with mixed emotions. The galaxy was rejoicing, throwing festivals in honor of human victory. Children played games where they pretended to be human soldiers. Artists created works depicting Day and his fleet as noble heroes. But Primsha remembered the reality. The screaming, the fire, the bodies. Humans weren't heroes. They were survivors who had learned to channel their violence in useful directions. They were dangerous creatures who the galaxy needed, but could never truly understand. His aide Kesh approached. Chancellor, you have a message from Earth Command. It was from Commander Day, Fleet Admiral Day now. The message was simple. Thank you for that first distress signal. You gave humanity a purpose beyond survival. You gave us something to protect. Whatever comes next, we'll be ready. Primsha typed his response carefully. We didn't call for heroes. We called for help. You answered. That's all we needed. He sent the message and watched the sun set over his rebuilt capital. The city was alive again, bustling with Veltir, who would never know how close they had come to extinction. They lived their peaceful lives without fear, because somewhere in the darkness, humans were watching. It wasn't the galaxy Primsha had wanted, but it was the galaxy they had, and perhaps that was enough. In orbit above Earth, Day stood on his repaired bridge and looked at his fleet. Battered but unbroken, bloodied but victorious. His soldiers were celebrating their win, singing their war songs, remembering their dead. They were killers. Monsters. The galaxy's worst nightmare. They were also its best hope. And they would keep fighting, keep dying, keep protecting the innocent, because that's what Deathworlders did. They survived. And they made sure everyone else survived too, even if it terrified them. Especially if it terrified them. Because fear meant respect, and respect meant the galaxy would think twice before starting conflicts. The human presence had created an uncomfortable peace, not through diplomacy or treaties, but through the simple certainty that violence would be met with overwhelming force. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even good. But it was real. And in a galaxy full of threats, reality was all that mattered. Day returned to his quarters and sat in the dark, alone with his thoughts and his ghosts. 4,000 names added to the memorial wall. 4,000 families who would grieve. 4,000 reasons why this had to mean something. His communicator chimed, another distress signal, another world in danger, another fight. Day stood, put on his uniform, and walked back to the bridge. There was always another fight, and humans would always answer.